From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Surlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence. And remember, it's Spaceboy Universe, and you're in it.
Hello, it's Spaceboy, and I am so excited to be talking with you tonight. You cannot believe how excited I am. So greetings, hello, salutations, howdy, whatever feels right. To my immediate left is the lovely Surlana. Say hello, Surlana.
Hey.
So, with that said, how are we doing, Surlana?
I'm assuming we're doing okay?
We're doing fine. We had a slight technical difficulties before the show started, but
heart-pounding last-minute technical difficulties.
In true Spaceboy fashion, I managed to get the warp drive going before the evil empire decided to blow up the Millennium Falcon. So there you go. So, this is Spaceboy Universe, episode number 011, and tonight we are going to talk about electronic music. I am so glad that I can finally breathe now after that technical difficulty, but you don't know a thing that has happened. But so let's just carry on like normal. So, Surlana, let's do a little housekeeping before we get into our normal banner.
Our normal scheduled banner.
Basically, if you want to follow along with the show, all you have to do is go to Twitter. And our handle on Twitter is at the SB Universe. And if you want to ask a question, you can also do it through Twitter, which is hashtag SBUQ. That's hashtag SBUQ. Now, a lot of our listeners are now gravitating over to the Spreaker chat room, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. We want you to find a place that feels comfortable for you for the show. So if you want to chat in the Spreaker chat room, how does one do that, Surlana?
Well, actually, if they want to go to spaceboyuniverse.com/FAQ, I have typed up a nifty how-to guide with screenshots.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, you've been a busy beaver, haven't you?
Go to spaceboyuniverse.com. The live show is embedded right there in the stream. If you look at it, there's a little talk bubble. Click that talk bubble. That will get you into chat. You will need a Spreaker login. If you're on your phone, you can download the Spreaker app and search for us there and listen and talk through there.
Well, that sounds pretty awesome. So, yeah, if you want to follow along and chat with all the other space cadets that are out there listening, the Spreaker app is the way to go. Of course, if you love Twitter, like I said, we'll follow you on Twitter, answer your questions with the hashtag SBUQ. That's always great. And so either way, it's great. Now, also, since Surlana just mentioned spaceboyuniverse.com, it is the best way to find out the latest news, updates, and all our social media links. Because let's face it, our media footprint is quite huge out there.
We have so many. It's probably getting out of hand.
Surlana, why don't you name a few?
Well, first of all, we also have, in addition to, excuse me, I'm sorry, I knew I was going to cough, Twitter and, of course, Facebook. We also have a Pinterest account where we just, we go and pin things that interest us, that are, part of the universe. So you might want to go check that out. That's linked right there on all the social media. We also have, our shows are archived on SoundCloud and YouTube, and we've got a link to that. And we've also got, what else do we have? We've got Tumblr. Mm-hmm. just in case we want to reference something and don't want to clog up Twitter, we'll put it in Tumblr. We also have an official LinkedIn business page, and we have we call it playlist on Spotify, and that will be Spaceboy Music Playlist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've picked out some dandies of electronic music this past week that I've come across just to get your palate wet, so to speak. It doesn't necessarily mean I might, I guess, endorse a particular artist, but it just comes across that some of these artists are worthy of listening to. So if you get a chance...
You also made a playlist, and did you put it on Twitter or somewhere, regarding some of the artists we're going to be talking about tonight?
I believe that was part of the same list that I gave as far as Spotify was concerned. Mm-hmm. A few space cadets out there found that list and followed it, and I guess got a chance to jam out to it. And it's quite an interesting list. It's not an extensive list of all the artists that we'll be covering tonight, but at least, like I said, it'll give an opportunity for those out there to get their palate wet with some deliciousness of music, electronic music out there. So, with that, Surlana.
Yes.
This is the part where we kind of chit-chat with each other and, find out what's going on and with our witty banner. And
yeah, this is what we've called very well-scheduled, well-documented banter.
Well,
scripted.
This week in my so-called job that basically, I have to do to support the Spaceboy universe, I went out to a job location, and it just so happens that this end user had a poster of two cats called the Bobs. And
the oatmeal.com, yes. Know it well.
Now, this is new to me. And
honey, you're on the last train to Coolsville. We've known about this for years.
Well, I'm so sorry I missed that one. But the poster is about the two Bobs and the cats, and I thought, hey, this is quite entertaining. So I think at some point I'm going to get a poster of the two Bobs.
That site's very funny.
And I want to apologize to everybody out there in listening land. My cough is kind of playing funny with me right now, so I'm trying to make the best out of the...
You're still not fully 100% recovered from the Thanksgiving week congestion 2015, but you're a lot better. You're getting there. We are getting some people in Spreaker chat. One says that there's some cutouts. The other one says they're not experiencing cutouts. So I'm thinking this has got to be on
Spreaker?
The other side. Yeah, Spreaker, because we tested our equipment today and everything seems fine.
Yeah, at some point we'll probably have to follow up.
We'll have to follow up with Spreaker and say.
So let's make arrangements to do that.
Right.
So we apologize, but as you know, Space Cadets, we will endeavor to make the best possible quality show. And if indeed something is becoming foobar on whoever's in, we'll definitely look at it. And, I'm looking at the broadcast in on our end, and we're gravy. We're green as always, like last time. And we are just saddened to hear that you're not getting the best performance. So we will look into that, because this is the second week, and I had talked to Surlana that,
last week's was pretty choppy, because you could look at the stream and see where it just absolutely drops and then comes back. So
well, the thing is, through most of the show, we're good until a few minutes before the hour, and then right after the hour, I guess about 3 minutes, that's when we had that total loss out. But, but yet, as I'm saying, space friends, you should not by Space Cadets, don't worry about a thing. We've got you in mind, and we are aware of the situation, and we will endeavor to make it a better universe for you. So what else is on the banner list?
The banter list?
Yeah, banter list. I'm sorry, nasal thing.
I have a cough too, but I don't have access to a mute button, so I'll just move away from the mic. All right, I have a little bit of that congestion too.
There we go.
Other than having a migraine yesterday, it was really bad. Stuck at work. I really kind of fell down on my research at the last minute, had to scramble and get it worked up to date, to discuss that with you, and learned a few things in my research for this show that was like, oh, I didn't know that. So I kind of enjoyed doing the research for this one, because I am into the subject matter, probably not as deeply as you, because you do compose electronic music. So
I like to think
I just
do.
listen.
And
there's benefits to being married to an electronic musician of free, good music.
I like to provide you with free, good music.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll get to help name a song, and I'll say, dude, put a guitar in there, and you will.
Well, you have famously been a major part, and well, I'm just going to say it, in the theme song for Fade to Black, Fade or Not One, you did recommend.
Here's what actually happened. You had already started on it, and you're well qualified to just you know what to do. You just go.
Well, back up for a second. Jimmy contacted me, and then it was like, dude, I need this like 10 seconds ago. So I whipped up a song, and then continued.
You almost physically drug me out of bed. I was warm. I was cozy. I was reading an ebook. You're like, please just come in here and listen. And I never know if you just want listen, moral support, pat on the back, good job, or listen, help me. I don't know what to do with this. Help me fix it. I never know which one it is. Because sometimes when you just want pat on the back and I give you honest criticism, I feel like I need to get in the car and go away for a while. So this one, I think you actually said, dude, what are you doing with all this? I said, okay, where did that come from? I said, you're sitting in front of 6 actual guitars. Why don't you pick one of them up and actually shred some? And I said, and do it like this. And then you did.
What it was is I was using a virtual setup for guitar. And it drives her nuts when I do that because, yes, indeed, I have all these guitars.
He has actual guitars, and he can play them. He's got 3 or 4 just your basic electric guitars, and that they're all red by coincidence. Well, he's got a bass, and he's got a gorgeous acoustic.
Not the Parker Fly. The Parker Fly is...
Oh, the Parker Fly.
Black and white.
That one, well, you got that more recently, so I'm not familiar with that one and what it does. Yeah. He's got them all on their nice little stands, and then he's got just like this wall of keyboards lined.
Needless to say, she criticized the thing, saying, "Why don't you do something live?" And
you asked me for that.
That's fine. That's fine because I
said, "Dude, this is rock and roll. This is old school. This is shred. This is Eddie Van Halen. This is Jimi Hendrix. Imagine Jimmy riding this big white steed in the desert at night." At dusk, and the gods of rock are forming in the clouds, and they're coming down to smile upon him. You've got to think epic. And I think you pulled it off.
Yeah, I think I did okay. I mean, people seem to like it. But I guess that's the history beyond that. Before we go on break, there's a few other new items I want to start with the show. And one is a strange but true thing. And basically, I'll just tell you, it's... So basically, there are 16 million thunderstorms on Earth every year. Back in January of 2010, a man in Sydney, Australia, was struck by lightning while doing his dishes at the kitchen sink. During the same storm, lightning entered another home through an open window and set the curtains on fire. So
lightning's just waiting for you to do some household chores and screw up your day.
Yeah, so the moral of the story is don't do dishes during a thunderstorm.
That's what we have a dishwasher for.
And another thing we'd like to start here at Spaceboy Universe is, we have the 6 topics that we cover.
Did we ever tell people about, we now have, the Spaceboy Universe is about 6 topics?
I think I kind of mentioned it in a Twitter thing.
Okay.
I guess, are you ready to test me what those topics are?
You could test me. I'm like, I'll get 5 and there'll be the 6th one. Like, what was the 6th one? I don't know.
Well, tonight, everybody got a sample on Twitter as far as those topics are concerned. There's 6.
Oh, yeah. I can scroll down and
They're
look.
Basically six areas that we plan on covering for Spaceboy Universe. One would be pop culture.
History. Games or gaming.
Games, yeah.
Fringe science. Technology.
Yes.
And music, course, which would be tonight.
Yeah, so tonight is our topic of music, and I'm sure in there'll be a little technology because we We'll touch upon the keyboards that were used with some of these bands.
You've got to explain why it's different and groundbreaking and innovative.
Right. So sticking with the theme of Spaceboy Universe, I'm also going to do, I guess, on this day, so on December 5th in history, we have, in 1792, George Washington was re-elected President of the United States. In 1870, you should like this, Surlana, being the book person you are, the death of Alexander Dumas, who wrote
The Three Musketeers.
You are absolutely correct. In 1904, the Japanese destroyed the Russian fleet at Port Arthur. And about 2 years later, the Russian admiral that was involved in that goes on trial, accused of surrendering the ships to the Japanese. In 1912, Italy, which it's Italy. Italy, Germany, and Austria renew the Triple Alliance. 1977, President Sadat of Egypt severs links with Syria, Libya, and Algeria, and South Yemen. And also, this is a very significant day as well in the United States. Did you know that today is the day in history that U.S. celebrates the end of Prohibition? So
that's significant.
So my fellow
drink up.
My fellow cadets, space cadets, raise a glass and drink up because it's the end of Prohibition on this day, December 5th, in history. So, with that said, why don't we take our first break? And when we come back,
now end our official banter.
When we come back, we'll kick this show into drive, and we'll start talking about electronic music. And we look forward to seeing you. So don't go away.
You're listening to Spaceboy Universe, your cosmic tour de force.
Hey, Surlana.
What?
If Spaceboy Universe was cheese, would you eat it? Come on now, it's a simple question.
Maybe.
SpaceboyUniverse.com. Do you have a great product or an idea? Then Spaceboy Universe is looking for you. We invite you to contact us at contact@spaceboyuniverse.com. Be a part of the universe. Be a part of Spaceboy Universe.
Techno, dance, atmospheric moods? Yes, my friends. My latest release, Digital, has something for everyone. Even makes a great gift for Grandma. Buy your digital download at spaceboymusic.com.
To call in, dial area code 713-701-5214. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
Yes, indeed. We are here. So tonight's topic is electronic music. And, it's such a broad area to cover. Wouldn't you say, Surlana?
Yes, and I was doing my research. I thought, well, okay, why don't I just break this down to significant events like technology that emerged and the most influential or innovative or pioneers in the field. Mm-hmm. So, and then you decide, well, let's just break it down by decade, and so that's because it's such a big topic. And there's gonna be some artists or groups that you think we missed or you don't agree with, but because there is so much, and there are some that really mean a lot to us personally. So yeah, they did get some preferential treatment, and you'll find that out. So
another thing to add to that is also our topic begins in probably you could say the last part of 1960s, 70s. Is where we're going to start. However, electronic music really has its roots going back into the 20s, 30s area.
Well, it goes back as far as electricity goes back.
Well, that is true. But as far as like the first instrument we're dealing with is the theremin in 1919.
Oh gosh, I love the theremin.
Which was,
I wish you had one.
well, maybe one day, dear. And then also, during the 50s, you have Dr. Robert Moog, creator of many of the products that are used very solid in the 70s, 80s, and beyond, as far as electronic keyboards are concerned. But so where we're starting off with is the 1970-ish in the beginning. So, Surlana, what do you have for us?
Well, right before that, how we got there is there's a person who creates something that affects everything that comes after and influences everyone that comes after. So, in 1963, Robert Moog designs and builds the first Moog modulator synthesizer. Mm-hmm. And then everything that comes after is pretty much kind of built off of that. He made it simple for musicians to incorporate synthetic sounds in their recordings. And about 64, you've got the Monkees, the Doors, the Byrds. They are the earliest adopters of the Moog synthesizer. So he can be credited with really kickstarting our modern electronic music.
Yeah, really about 1970, you have the invention of the Mini Moog, which made it widely available. It was portable. It was relatively affordable synth. So just about anybody could, get a synthesizer at a very reasonable deal.
Yeah, that's something that started in the 60s and 70s. You've got the Beach Boys and Genesis, Pink Floyd start experimenting with theremins, mellotrons, and then synthesizers. And then I don't know if you're ready to go into the 70s yet, once that everybody gets a hold of the synthesizers, probably you've got some of the earliest people like Giorgio Moroder. Mm-hmm. And he's considered to be the founder of disco, and he's very influential. He's a trailblazer. He's still going at it at the age of 74 right now. Mm-hmm. He most recently collaborated with Daft Punk for their album Random Access Memories, which won Grammys. He's also probably best known for collaborating and producing Donna Summer's I Feel Love and Hot Stuff. And it's got that really, that kind of like what would become like a techno almost beat or, beats per minute rhythm. He's responsible for soundtrack scores such as Take My Breath Away and Top Gun and Flashdance and Blondie's Call Me in American Gigolo.
Now, also, let me get my Moroder talk in
Sure.
In the sense that, I Feel Love was definitely one of the avant-garde songs that he produced. Something else that led to a very popular track, and that was for the movie Midnight Express, the song called The Chase. Now, offhand, a lot of you out there listening would know this particular song because the song is used as the intro to Coast AM.
I was going to ask you that. I said,
Yes.
Wait a minute. It didn't mention that in here, but I guess it wouldn't.
No, in fact, that's used in fact, Coast to Coast is using that particular song. And what
But
makes
it sounds a lot like I Feel Love. Is it the bass?
Well,
I'm
that's
hearing?
that's one of his key signatures of his music.
That
was
little thumping.
the arpeggio.
Yes.
And it's famous for that. In fact, he just released a new album called Deja Vu. And in that particular album, he has a song called 74 is the New 24. And if you listen to that particular song, it's got that classic sound that he's produced for some songs that Donna Summer has done.
Disco.
The disco, the beat, the electronic. It's very heart pounding. And if you get a chance and you do like the song The Chase, check out that album, the Deja Vu, and the song called 74 is the New 24. And yeah, he's still rocking it. In fact, I think he went on tour with Kylie Minogue.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Another thing I like that tying in with these 70 artists, I know I'm jumping ahead
That's
here,
fine.
but Brian Eno.
Now he's next on my...
I was going to say that he said of Giorgio that he was going to change the way music was written for the next 15 years as far as electronic music was concerned. So he goes down in history as a great innovator of electronic music and should get all the credit that's due to him. So you were going to say about Brian?
Well, Brian Eno was an ambient music pioneer. He was a technical innovator, and he was very influential. He is known for altering the way that music is composed, performed, perceived. That was Spaceboy, not me.
1 point.
Now, one thing I want to tell the people I see in Spreaker Chat are listening, because I know the type of subject matter they're interested in. Listen to this. Eno was born in 1948 in Woodbridge, England, near a neighboring U.S. Air Force base, and grew up listening to Martian music on the U.S. Armed Forces radio.
Did we ever find out what Martian music is?
No, I didn't have time.
I need to write that down as a note.
Do any of those, Woodbridge, U.S. Air Force Base, any of those ring a bell, people?
Ring-a-ding-ding.
You know what we're talking about? The Rendlesham Forest incident? So I just thought that was a little aside. But as far as Eno's music career, he rose to prominence as a member of the glam band Roxy Music. And he would treat their band's sound electronically. I think their most famous song is More Than This.
Mm-hmm, very good. And if you're tuned into the Spotify Spaceboy music list, I do believe that particular song is on the list for your enjoyment.
Okay. He also innovated a tape delay system called Frippertronics, and Fripp is the last name of his music partner's. That's his last name. Mm-hmm. He treated Fripp's guitar with looped delays in order to employ studio technology as a means of musical composition. So he set the stage for sampling hip-hop and electronica. But notably, he also produced U2's Achtung Baby.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was quite interesting, mm-hmm. When we found that out. Who else do we have on this list?
Yellow Magic Orchestra.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Sorry, I'm having to type a little bit. They're a Japanese techno-pop band in the late 70s. Excuse me. They were hugely popular and influential. They're second only in influence to Kraftwerk, who they were influenced by. So they used a lot of synthesizers, sequencers, drum machines, and I admit I've never heard of them before. But they disbanded at their peak of their popularity because all the members wanted to do some solo careers. But in 1990s, they were still having a big influence on the electronic scene. They were cited as pioneers of ambient house music. And in the 90s, they released High Tech No Crime remix album. They reunited in 93 to release an LP called Technodon before going their separate ways again.
Mm-hmm. Now, just before you get into the next band, because you mentioned...
What's a man?
Band, the Kraftwerk, but I just wanted to point out other particular musicians during this time that were using the Moog synthesizer were progressive rock bands.
Yeah.
Bands like Pink Floyd, Yes, mm-hmm. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Genesis, and they extensively used the synthesizer. Now, getting back into that electronic theme that we're going with, you were, I guess, about to bring up Kraftwerk, were you?
Well, no, but if you want to.
Well, I'm sorry. What juicy band do you have next for me?
It's not a band. It's a man.
Oh, well, who's the man?
Jean-Michel Jarre.
Oh,
I
yes.
assume that's how it's pronounced. I don't know French.
Mm-hmm.
I just enjoy saying Jean-Michel Jarre.
I believe his first album out there in the 70s was about 78. It was called
77, Oxygen.
Well, are you sure it wasn't Equinox?
No, that was a later. That was in 78.
That wasn't 78.
His breakthrough album, Oxygen, he got that after struggling all the way through up until that. And then he released Equinox, which is a smash hit. Mm-hmm. And then in 83, he released something called Music for Supermarkets, which came an instant collectible album, one of the most collectible albums in history. He recorded it for an art exhibit, and only one copy was ever pressed, selling at a charity auction for about $10,000.
Wow.
Now, in '86, he had an extravagant live performance here in Houston celebrating NASA's silver anniversary.
I'm sorry, you could have continued, but we need to take our break.
All right. And all I was going to say about him is it was over 1 million in attendance. It was broadcast globally. He went on hiatus, and he came back in 2007 and had a good career.
With that said, Surlana, let's take a quick break again, and then when we come back, we'll continue with our 70s and then get into the 80s.
You're listening to Spaceboy Universe, the #1 broadcast on Omicron Persei 8.
Techno, dance, atmospheric moods? Yes, my friends. My latest release, Digital, has something for everyone. Even makes a great gift for Grandma. Buy your digital download at spaceboymusic.com.
To call in, dial area code 713-7015-214. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
All right, I think I caught Surlana by surprise with that break, but she was on a roll with some juicy information. So do you want to pick it back up with the good old Jean?
Oh, just not much more there. He had that broadcast here in Houston. He took several breaks from the music scene in the 80s and the 90s. But he came back in 2007 after a 7-year hiatus from recording, and he released a new dance single. I'm going to pronounce this as Teo and Taya, which was a surprisingly strong return to the electro music scene. And that's about all I have about him. And I remember hearing his music like on like Pure Moods or something like that. Who didn't have the Pure Moods CD?
Yeah, because a lot of those artists with that new age sound, I didn't get to know them until really the 80s because I guess they repackaged them and then of course
I think new age music kind of got a bad reputation.
Yeah, probably.
At some point.
It was great to relax to.
Oh yeah, it really was, and that's what they pushed it as, is relaxation, like Pure Moods. Which I think was actually a good smash hit.
Yeah, I owned a copy of it.
Yeah. So, what else you want to go into? I've got 3 more really influential bands in the 70s.
I think you do. Go ahead. I mean, me. I'm like,
well, here's one. I've always heard of them, but I don't know that I've heard their music, which is Tangerine Dream.
Right, and they're on that same vein as Jean Michel Jarre. And
they range from kind of atmospheric new age and space music to, I'm assuming space music, if they're talking about this, is, do you remember like public radio would have music from the hearts of space, late at night? I'm assuming it might be like that, and I would try to fall asleep to that. But they had that, and they had harsh electronic dance. They have, and this is interesting, 4 distinct stages of their music development. The experimentalist minimalism of the late 60s and 70s, stark sequencer trance from mid to late 70s, the group's most influential period, an organic form of instrumental music on their frequent film and studio work in the 80s, and then a propulsive dance style, which I don't know what they think that is. But their first album was on the Virgin label. It was called Phaedra.
Yeah.
It was a milestone not only for the group, but for the instrumental music. So Richard Branson let them come to the studio and just do whatever they wanted. They had free reign. They used Moog synthesizers and sequencers for the very first time. And so they created this trance-inducing rhythm and sound. And it was an update of their 60s and 70s kind of classical minimalism. But in 81, they did some soundtrack work for Risky Business, Flashpoint, The Keep, Firestarter, and Vision Quest, and Legend. So that's where you may have heard their music without knowing it.
Well, I do know that they are a German band. Are we there at that point where we're going to talk that?
Well, I've got one more before we get to the one we're really excited about. Not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but I know his work. Vangelis. Oscar, he created that well-known, possibly overplayed hit, Chariots of Fire, for the film Chariots of Fire. Most successful and admired electronic composer of his era. I think Chariots of Fire is interesting because it sounds really traditional, classic instruments, but it was all electronic.
Mm-hmm.
So that same year in '81, he created a powerful score to Blade Runner, which began his partnership with Ridley Scott. So he also made soundtracks for 1942 Conquest of Paris. He did some music he composed for Jacques Cousteau documentaries. So he had a very good solo career, and then he released an album in '85, '88, and in the '90s. In 2001, he re-recorded an orchestral version of Mythodia, and NASA used it for their Mars Odyssey mission that same year. He teamed with Oliver Stone for Stone's movie Alexander in 2007, or is it 2004? 2004. He released 25th anniversary edition of Blade Runner music in 2007, and a score he did for the film El Greco. And for the London 2012 Olympics, he retooled and recorded some new pieces to Chariots of Fire so they could play it there.
Yeah.
And he just cemented his musical legacy right there. But now we can talk about where I think electronic music as we know it today kicks off.
Right. Now, the band that they got let me get my thoughts together. I'm sorry. The band Kraftwerk formed in 1970 with Ralph Hunter and I can't remember. I guess it's
Florian Schneider.
Yes, exactly. They started to play live at Variety with a variety of instruments processed through synthesizers and electronic-based effects. I'm sure you've done.
Yes.
Yes.
There's a lot about them out there because they are the most influential group in this genre. They're like the blueprint of how you do electronic music. First of all, I learned when researching Kraftwerk that Kraftwerk means power station in German. They describe themselves, their music, as robot pop, even going so far as to promote their image as automatons or robots, very minimal movements, very slick looking. They all kind of dress the same. They wanted to really present that no human aspect. So they released in 1972 Kraftwerk 2, which was done solely with a drum machine, and it gave their band this distinct robot sound. So in 73 they began with their clean cut scientific image, with the skinny ties and the red shirts. And this was like in juxtaposition to the dominant pop fashions going on in the 70s, if you can remember what that was like. In 74, the Autobahn LP was released in the U.S., and it finally reached in the upper charts here. Autobahn was performed on a Moog synthesizer. And I didn't realize this, but a lot of their LPs they released had a theme. They covered train travel with 77's Trans-Europe Express. 1978's The Machine Man was what they say bereft of human touches, that you could tell it was even made by humans. So by this time they were promoting that robot look, the automaton, the image that's solidified by the tracks "We Are the Robots." I mean, they come out and just say it. So
I was going to point out that back when I was a wee lad, I went to go visit my grandfather, and my aunt was living with them at the time, grandfather and grandma, and she was playing Autobahn. And I remember distinctly the cover of it had a Volkswagen.
Of course it did.
Yeah, and the Volkswagen Beetle. And I guess it was driving along this freeway, and I remember her playing it. And I immediately fell in love with this sound because until that point, I had been introduced to a lot of disco and music of top 40, and this was just, it was different. It was not what I had heard before, but it was still somewhat in that vein, and it was quite enjoyable. So I wanted to share that as my first memories of of Kraftwerk were Autobahn and on a 12-inch LP, and it brings back a lot of memories.
Well, they have that sound, like they're promoting this robot look, but it's also kind of a robotic sound. They don't so much sing as speak, except for Computer Love, where he does, it is sort of a lyrical sound he makes, but I think what upsets me is that Computer Love was sampled by Coldplay, and they didn't get any credit for that, or Kraftwerk didn't get any credit for that. I don't know if Coldplay got in any trouble or not, but I don't know the name of the Coldplay song that
I don't
has
think
the
that
sample.
was the only time Coldplay has sampled somebody else's music.
I'm trying to keep my opinions out of this. I really am, but it's difficult.
But, as we get towards the 80s, there was another artist that, I guess, sampled from Kraftwerk and used it in his music. And that person might be...
African Bambaataa did it.
There you go. Planet Rock.
African Bambaataa, he was a DJ during the 70s. He ascended to like a godfather status with Planet Rock, which was... he sampled from Kraftwerk, and he was really influenced by them. He was hip-hop's foremost DJ, organizer, and promoter of block parties. He was doing things that predated rap. He recorded electro-oriented rap only sparingly. And he did singles with Sex Pistol John Lydon. And by the 80s, he kind of moved to the background. He was part of this Zulu Nation collective, which included De La Soul, Queen Latifah, A Tribe Called Quest. He's kind of more like a founding father of rap, I suppose. He had great turntable skills. His knowledge of music let people say he was the best DJ in the business. He recorded with Arthur Baker. He assimilated a lot of Kraftwerk's Trans-Europe Express on that Planet Rock. It hit number 4 on the R&P charts. It missed the top 40, but so when Planet Rock came out, it was like up there with Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight, is one of the early classics of hip-hop.
Now, I guess we're going into the 80s, right, Surlana?
We are.
Now, I want to point out that as you get to the 80s, as far as synth is concerned, especially with Planet Rock, you have the use of the TR-808 from
808.
Roland. Yeah. And basically, it's a rhythm composer, and it was basically a programmable drum machine. And what was kind of cool about it was really meant for studio musicians to throw a track together to kind of do a demo. And but it ended up being, this device ended up being so affordable compared to the Lin LM, excuse me, nostril stain cleaner, doing this thing again. The Lin LM-1. Now, it went for about almost $5,500, where that TR-808 went for about $1,200. So significantly, it made it affordable for a musician to go and buy this 808, and that particular machine, along with various other machines like the TB-303, which was a bass synth, which you later get this bass synth show up in acid music. So the combination of the drum machine and that bass synth really reverberates through synthesizer history from that point. Some of the other synthesizers that are pretty well known during the 80s is the Prophet 5, and this is one of the first polyphonic synths, and what that means is you could play more than one note at the same time. So it was very significant. Other synthesizers that are very popular in music are Roland Jupiter.
Oh, yes. I've seen that a lot.
The JP, I want to say it's a JP8. I could be mistaken, but yeah, the Jupiter and the Yamaha DX7. What's significant about that, you hear any kind of bells that you hear in early 80s music, it comes from generally the DX7. And there's another one on this list that I didn't see. I could be thinking of The Prophet, and I now that I think about it, I think it is The Prophet. You get The Prophet that plays through a lot of well-known artists, like Naked Eyes was definitely one who uses a Prophet, and you can hear the richness of that particular synth in a lot of 80s music. So that kind of gives you an idea or kind of an overview. Now, there are other particular instruments used during this time, and I'm trying to remember the sampler that another group will kind of touch upon here that used a what was it called? The Fairlight, I think it was. And I think it wasn't just necessarily just this one group that used it. There were several groups that used this particular sample where they were able to sample clips and other good stuff and then make music out of it. But who's our first list on our list of 80s people?
Well, in 1980, a very prolific, well-known band forms. This is called Depeche Mode. They're sort of a techno band with synthesizer-based. They had multiple successes on the British charts. But they began as a bouncy dance pop outfit, which might explain Just Can't Get Enough, which is nothing like anything else they did. So they eventually moved to this darker, dramatic sound, synthetic, moody, provocative lyrics that buck, the convention of pop. They inspired countless other bands. They started out as a traditional instrument band, with guitars and keyboards. Mm-hmm. And then in 1980, they dropped all the real instruments and went to completely synth. They have gone through several iterations with band members leaving and joining. One of the band members left Depeche Mode to co-found Yazoo.
No, well, I was going to say another band member that was from 1980 to 82 that is significant is Vince Clarke, who went off to do
Erasure.
Yes.
Which we'll get to in a minute.
Yes.
In 87, they released Music for the Masses, featuring 3 Hot 100 singles: Strange Love, Never Let Me Down Again, Behind the Wheel. That propelled them into the mainstream. So they do cross over into the 90s with a boom when they released Violator, triple platinum Violator in 1990, which spawned Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence. Their works are classified as dark, kinky, psychosexual, and you got songs like Master and Servant. So it's like, I don't know if this is like BDSM music, but it's that's kind of how I hear it. But I still like Enjoy the Silence and World in My Eyes.
I'm reminded of a story that I heard, and I can't remember which band member of Depeche Mode was the one the story was about, but basically, I guess it was whoever was singing at the time. It was one of their kind of more sultry songs, and when they were in the studio, basically, the singer stripped down to his birthday suit because he was just so into singing whatever the song was. And so whenever I think of Depeche Mode, I think about how this guy ends up in his birthday suit while he's singing because he's just, I guess he's so turned on by singing the song. I wish I could remember the name of the song, but it was one of their more, laid back, sultry songs. And I'm sure it'll come to me later. But
wow. But they were deeply influential, and they released, I think, in the late 90s, a big anthology that was very popular.
Yeah.
And I can name several songs of theirs that I still enjoy to this day.
Oh, yeah. There's quite a few. I think hear a little bit of Spaceboy history. One of the first Depeche Mode songs that I remember getting was on a 45. And it was People Are People. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first Depeche Mode song. I'd heard other songs from them. It just so happens that I went down to the store, picked me up a 45, and because I'd gotten this brand new stereo system, and People Are People was the first one that I got for that particular band.
Good memories?
Good memories, yes.
So they're worth noting because their sound is so completely different and heavily based in synth. Mm-hmm. So that's Depeche Mode. you like to go on to the next thing?
Yeah,
Or-
okay. I mean, we're rocking and rolling, and so we'll go on to the next one.
Well, the next one is also got as another heavy hitter, which this next band rose from the ashes of Joy Division to triumph over that tragedy, New Order.
Yes.
An influential, widely acclaimed band of the 80s. They embraced the electronic texture and disco and underground club culture way before it became in vogue. So they sort of bridged the gap between these fusion and new wave and dance. So they were very kind of a thoughtful, oblique brand of synth pop. They started with Everything's Gone Green, their first single, and it was heavy with synthesizers, sequencers, and they also inspired by Kraftwerk. As I said, Kraftwerk is still going to be something everybody will go back to because they were kind of the first. They had electro beats from the New York underground scene, and then in 1982 they released Temptation, which was a major favorite among club goers. But they took a hiatus and resurfaced in '83 with Blue Monday, which came on and became the best-selling 12-inch release of all time, which I did not know, moving over 3 million copies worldwide. So in '86 they had Bizarre Love Triangle, making it finally got into mainstream pop audiences, and this was their American breakthrough. It cracked the top 40 with True Faith, and that one is, I remember that one. I remember the video because this was the MTV days, and they played it was just, as my dad would describe it, "Wait, listen to that noise," It's basically just rhythmic noise if you want to break it down. They also teamed with the ex-Smith guitarist Johnny Marr and the Pet Shop Boys frontman Mil Tennant to create Electronic, which scored a top 40 hit single called Getting Away With It.
Now, interesting thing you bring that up is not only did they team up with Pet Shop Boys, but they later on for a later album, they teamed up with Carl Bartos of Kraftwerk.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and they did 9 songs, and I guess it was about 95 that they did that. And when you hear that, you definitely hear the distinct Kraftwerk sound. It's basically, like I like to call it, it's New Order with Kraftwerk. And
it kind of sounds, some of their True Faith sounds kind of industrial to me, like somebody's banging on some machinery. That's kind of how I which is, it shocked me that it made it into mainstream, because but then the 80s were very wide open as far as music genres. So in '93 they reconvened and released their LP Republic, which earned them their highest charting American single, Regret.
Yes.
And it fell just shy of getting much higher in the US, but that one's a good one.
That's definitely a good one.
I really like Regret.
Are you saying that about the album, or
no, the song? There's Nothing I Regret.
Right. I'm. Yeah. So I had that one. It was a great album. It's a must-have in anyone's New Order collection. Among all the tons of other music they've performed. In fact, recently I believe they just released they got back together to release a brand new album, and that's out right now. So
yeah, they're still going at it, New Order. That's what I love about some of these successful 80s bands. They just didn't die.
Right.
Now this next group, unless you've got more.
No, I'm good. I'm just adding to...
I know you'll have a lot to say about this band.
Speaking of bands that never die, which in my case, this is a great one.
You don't even know what I'm going to say.
Well, go ahead and say.
You'll have a lot to say about this one because I know you love them. They're an experimental, genre-defying, very aptly named band. A techno-pop group whose music was a mixture of studio gimmick, tape splicing, synthesized beat. The Art of Noise took the material from studio sources and worked noise together to create their distinct postmodern soundscapes. They're probably more famous for their video than their actual songs.
Well, like I said, it's one of my all-time favorite groups, and in fact, they've influenced my music with sample-based rhythms and other sounds, and where some of my music is made very unique, and that uniqueness is inspired by the art of noise. And the band members alone are prolific.
Yeah, I just found out. I never knew if Art of Noise was one guy, a group. It was Ann Dudley, Larry Langan, and Paul Morley. That's the Art of Noise.
Other significant person that was a part of that at some point was Trevor Horn and J.J. Janzalik.
Horn was a very famous music producer.
Yes, he produced a lot of music in the 80s. And his hands were definitely in the pudding as far as these bands are concerned, because he touched them in one way or another. I'm trying to remember. I could be wrong. One of them wrote or co-wrote or helped write the Bugles video killed the radio star. Yeah, the Bugles.
The Bugles, the very first video that ever aired on MTV in 1980, whatever.
Right. And so from that moment, I mean, they were so ingrained in the 80s pop sound of synth pop. It's just countless groups that they've been a part of.
Well, they have that distinct sound. Okay, I'm thinking of Close to the Edit. That song, Close to the Edit.
Yes.
Where it sounds like they've sampled industrial machine sounds and then tweaked it to make it, fit together as far as the key, like it's in the key of whatever. And the video just went along with it perfectly, where they're taking a traditional instrument, the grand piano, and beating it up with other traditional instruments and chainsaws, like they're saying, this is dead, we're killing it because here's this hard, industrial synthetic sound.
Right.
I don't know if that's what they're actually trying to say, but that's, I love to read into things because I'm an English major.
No, I think that could very well be accurate, because I think I read something where Ann Dudley was talking about that very thing of taking music and ripping it apart and and making something of it. And
and of course, who can forget Moments in Love?
Yes, that's a very classic.
Very kind of moody, atmospheric, kind of puts you into a trance.
What I love about that song is it's not like a bunch of notes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, dun dun. I mean, it's just very simple. It's funny how the most simplest of songs can make anything seem grand.
How many notes was that dun dun? Was it just?
I believe it's 16 notes, and that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, 16.
Is it like the same note being hit over and over, or does it change?
No, it changes. I mean, I'm sure. I wished I could play a sample, but
Well, we could do that if we weren't automatically getting backed up to SoundCloud and YouTube, and those two would kick it back for copyright.
Definitely YouTube, because they're
serious about
it. They get their big boy pants on, and we're not going to let you play this in Bangladesh or Germany or whatever, because of the copyright thing.
Then do you remember their Who's Afraid of the Art of Noise? Mm-hmm. And in '86, they released Peter Gunn, which is sort of like a remix on the original Peter Gunn theme. And they did a collaboration with Tom Jones to cover Prince's Kiss. Mm-hmm. And that was all really heavily... Again, it just sounds like industrial machinery as music to me.
Very edgy, very in your face. So Lana, we're going to take another break here. So when we come back... We'll talk a little bit more 80s, because there's some there.
Just a few more.
We'll talk about the decline of synth pop in the 90s.
The heartbreaking moments.
But the bring back of electronic music. So don't go anywhere, Space Cadets, because we'll be right back.
You're listening to Spaceboy Universe, your cosmic tour de force.
Techno, dance, atmospheric moods? Yes, my friends. My latest release, Digital, has something for everyone. Even makes a great gift for Grandma. Buy your digital download at spaceboymusic.com.
To call in, dial area code 713-701-5214. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
Surlana,
What?
who are you listening to?
Spaceboy Universe Live.
Yes, we're live in charge.
Don't scare me like that. I thought you were going to tell me there's a big roach on the side of the table or something.
No, I wouldn't do that.
And I'd be like, well, tune in next week when she'll be back from therapy.
Well,
you know?
I'd hate to tell the audience that, hey, we're going to have to go on a 4-week sabbatical because
I've lost it.
I've had to replace all the equipment and everything. But so before we took our break, we were talking about Art of Noise. Do we have any other goodies about them? I mean,
Just not much of that other than I guess they disbanded at some point because I had not heard anything new from them. But I still enjoy their music. I still listen to Moments in Love, and I can't tell you how many remixes and mashups I've heard. I know I don't know if mashup talk is forbidden, and I won't drive us on a track. But I personally love mashups, but it has to be a good mashup. It can't just be anybody sticking us 2 songs together just because they can. But maybe at some point he'll let me talk about mashups. So,
well, what I was going to say, the band never really disbanded. It went through a low point, and the only constant member that I can see that went through from beginning to current would be Ann Dudley. She's been the constant of Art of Noise, and you've had some members drop out, but then come back. And for example, like Trevor Horn, it's just really a shame there hasn't been, I think the last thing we've heard from them was back in 2000, and nothing since then. I think they've, repurposed or repackaged some of their stuff for today, but nothing new. And but I'm not sad. I'm glad to have been a part of that history.
Yeah, I was there and listening to them when they came out and saw the videos when they were released, so it was a good time. Now, we will go into 2 more groups that we will, pardon us as we fangirl and fanboy over the next 2 groups. They mean a lot to us, separately and together. So, want to get into Erasure?
Sure.
Oh my gosh, Erasure's music, for the most part, it's the most hyperactive, just like a machine gun.
There's a lot of energy there.
Lots of energy.
And I think that's a lot because of what Andy Bell brings to the table.
Andy Bell, first openly gay singer.
And let's not forget Vince Clarke.
Who's former Depeche Mode.
Who brings the electronic to the table.
And they formed Erasure in 1985, Clarke and Bell, synth-based. They had strong dance roots. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. They had Andy Bell's flamboyant sense of, they started to break through in America in 1988 with Chains of Love. Oh my gosh, Chains of Love. That's one of your first just like heavy hitting, really kind of melt your ear off. The synth is like, but it was dancey. Oh my gosh, it's so dancey. That's what they're really known for, is that electronic. And
well, I'm not surprised because
they still have a strong fan base.
Andy Bell loves disco music. For example, ABBA. They remade.
Yes, that's in here.
They remade one of their songs. First time. Take a Chance on Me. Yeah,
they did that in '92 ish, I think. The Chains of Love in '88 reached number 12 in the U.S. Its follow-up, A Little Respect. I love that song. It should give me a little respect.
Right.
Peaked at number 4 over here, and then they released the ABBA-esque album. Sorry, and I used to refer to things as albums anymore. It was a tribute to ABBA,
right?
And that became a number 1 single in the UK. Now, one thing they're known for, these hard driving dancey, hyperactive. It's like I feel like my heart's going to explode sometimes when I listen to their music. Then they go and do something really about turn, but really cool. They go and perform covers of their hyper dancey beats in Nashville and create these country music covers of their own music. Now, if you have Spotify, get on Spotify and go look up Erasure's Road to Nashville and listen to Oh L'Amour. They take this dancey, upbeat thing and they make it into this powerful country music ballad, real slow and relaxed, just really amazing. And I'm not a huge fan of country music, which I know you find odd because I've only lived in the deep South my entire life, but my parents did not grow up listening to country music. They were listening to swing, big band, because that was their era, so I didn't know from country music.
And we had this talk earlier today, just going off on a tangent of country music. I don't mind country music. Where I do mind is I'm not a big fan of modern day country music.
It's not really country music. It's more like pop with a twang.
See, because I was brought up around my grandparents who listened to Conway 20, who listened
Conway 20.
I mean,
is that like 50 Cent's Country Brother?
Listen to
Twitty.
Oh, well, sinuses thing. It's still giving me a problem.
Yeah, but I'm still your wife, and I have to give you a hard time.
So let's get back on track. One thing I want to say about Vince Clarke, indeed, great musical synth artist.
Vince Clarke is the guy who's actually probably pushing the knobs and playing the keyboards. He doesn't.
The thing is with him,
sing, and he doesn't.
I find that a lot of my music is inspired by his taste for instruments and sounds as well. He goes for instruments that are the retro kind. In fact, I watched this wonderful documentary about his music studio and all the music, his equipment. He's got equipment that is very late 60s, early 70s that he grabs samples from. He creates these different sounds that you can't get normally from equipment today. So he's taking sounds that are on instruments back from the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, that you hear in their music today. So I'm definitely inspired by that when it comes to Vince Clarke, epic musician.
Well, we were lucky, was it earlier this year or last year, to go see Erasure here in Houston live. And I had never seen a concert there, so it was really interesting. I swear I thought Andy Bell was going to take all his clothes off at some point. I was like, babe, did he just take off his pants? He's like, yeah, he's wearing these little short silver shorts. Like, is he going to just stop there?
Silvery shorts like a disco ball.
I love the music. Please keep his pants on, please.
Surprising about that show is that, the music was awesome. The show,
high energy.
It was high energy.
Never missed a beat. And gosh, how old are they now?
And the stage was very minimal.
Very minimal, but good lighting, good,
yes.
that, kind of almost maybe a rave feeling. But it was so much fun to hear their music, and I think maybe they had like updated versions of their classics. But
and they had
there's something about seeing the bands that we like live now. They're so much better than their recorded stuff. I don't know what that is, and that Erasure's still at it. They're still touring. I guess they're still releasing new music because we heard new stuff there.
Right.
So, enjoyable band if you like to have your heart explode to dance to it, and their duo setup is very like the next group that it's got to be our all-time favorite.
Yes.
And this would be Pet Shop Boys.
That would be Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe.
They must be one of the most successful duo pop groups of all times because they're still at it. So now their music is all synth. It's all keyboard. But they have songs that go from like Erasure's kind of like, hyperactive, dancey, club, ravey. But then they have these really soft albums that sound like ballads and classic and like heartbreaking music. And some of their songs, you could almost do country covers of them because of the lyrics. I always imagine "You Only Tell Me You Love Me When You're Drunk" as a country song.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it should be, somebody out there in the country music world should be covering that song.
Right.
Because the lyrics are so classic country.
And you can definitely hear a steel guitar playing in that particular song.
Yes, you can. But they formed in 1981, and they met at an electronics store where they discovered their mutual love for synth. And nothing was ever the same again. They shifted from modern dance pop to disco to techno, and their reputation stayed intact. They took flight in 1983 when they met Bobby Orlando as a producer, and he produced their first single in 1984, West End Girls. Oh my gosh. Can you play some West End Girls over and over? Yes, please. I don't care. I'll listen to it. I'll still love it. That was his first time he ever tried to rap, Neil Tennant. You know, and I didn't realize he was rapping at the time, but he wasn't singing. He can sing, but, you know, sometimes you're better off dead. There's a gun in your hand. It's pointing
what's
at your
interesting
head.
about that particular song is they played that on Soul Train with Don Cornelius. And,
Did they? Now,
yes,
now they're
and,
very soulful, I think.
And
Neil's
Don
very
Cornelius
soulful.
said at the time that you guys are going somewhere. You know, he could hear the sound, and Don Cornelius was really hip into what they were doing, and so I really believe that he was telling them the truth, because here they're still producing music today.
But what's crazy about West End Girls is it was a minor hit here in the U.S., sure, but it went nowhere in Britain, where they're from.
Wow.
So that's crazy. So they met critical success in '86 with their release of Please, with reissued and remixed versions of Opportunities and West End Girls. So I guess they went back with that to the UK, and it took off. So in '87, they released Actually, launching hits as It's a Sin, What Have I Done to Deserve This, with Dusty Springfield.
Yes.
Always on My Mind, which is a lovely cover of Elvis Presley's hit. They released Introspective in '88 with Domino Dancing and Left to My Own Devices.
Yes.
They continue releasing albums till '93, and they took an absence from albums to do some work on soundtracks and for the West End to get some music and content into a theater.
Well, the thing is that Neil Tennant is a very theatrical person, and so if you've ever had a chance or to see a show of the Pet Shop Boys,
flamboyant, theatrical.
It's very theatrical.
I will tell you about that in a minute.
And so that translates into their need to want to do that kind of thing. In fact, Chris has always referred to Neil as a Renaissance man. Who is
Chris, the quiet one.
Yes, the quiet one.
Actually, you know, they released Nightlife, which was based and bilingual. And in 2000, they did the soundtracks. And in May of 2014, they announced some more original music, and they did a concert piece date at the Royal Albert Hall. They were commemorating the British codebreaker Alan Turing with the BBC Orchestra. They were honored at the Brit Awards for, I guess, Lifetime Achievement, where they performed an awesome mashup of their own work. It was like a medley, I guess, of pieces of their current work and their hits, and they ended it in West End Girls, and everybody was jumping up and down and hollering and screaming. They're continuing to tour. They're on tour right now. They continue to release music, and last year in April, we were lucky enough to drive to Austin. We got to see them in concert, and we got to meet them and shake their hands and get their autograph.
In full disclosure, this was my third concert.
My first concert with you, but you hadn't met them before, had you?
This was the first time I got to meet my musical idols, and it was quite... they asked me how I was doing, and I said I was absolutely fabulous, and they had a small chuckle out of that because of them doing one of the songs.
And I didn't know how you were going to react, being these are your idols, so I just walked up and went, oh, hey, Chris, hey, Neil.
Yeah, the true Surlana fashion, nonchalant, like she's known him forever, and hey, buds, what's going on?
Yeah. Because, I mean, much as I loved them, they didn't have this vast influence on me because, I'm not a music composer or writer or anything. So I can barely play anything. I can't even read music, but I thought that was a cool moment. And he's like, oh, and I wish we could have had like an hour with them, you know, to ourselves. But I think it's cool.
You take what you can get.
I think it's cool we got to meeght them. So
and of course that concert was phenomenal.
Now that is it. It had laser lights. It was like a rave. It was they had dancers. They had an amazing backdrop. That was. I actually have videos of this. I don't know where I could post it legally, but I have little snippet videos I've backed up. I don't know if you might how get them out to you, but there's some of their songs were even better at that concert than their released. But I really enjoyed that concert. They have, flamboyant headdresses and headgear.
Costume changes.
The costume changes. That Neil wore a silvery lame sport coat, and both of them had on like bowler hats that were covered in broken glass, like a disco ball. And they got halfway through a song, and they shone a light off of his hat, and it became a big disco ball, effect every time he moved his head. So it's just
so needless to say, Pet Shop Boys prolific,
and they're
and when they go to as far as if you ever get a chance to see them live,
do it
because they are awesome. You think their sound sounds great playing through your stereo, that is one thing, but when you go to a show for the Pet Shop Boys, you're
going for a show.
You're going for a show. The music is great. Yeah. It's thumping. I mean, it's amazing that they're, just like one of their songs, it's that you're still here all these years. And they're just as good, if not better, from day one when they released the first CD.
Neil Tennett's voice, along with Andy Bell, I don't know what, they've taken good care of themselves. They sound exactly the same as they did when they released each of these songs back in the day.
Right. So we leave the Pet Shop Boys zone, and as we leave the 80s, we are introduced to Great Sadness.
Well, the Pet Shop Boys and groups like that didn't, they went on to do all these great songs, but we didn't get to hear them over here on the radio, on the top 40, because by the end of the 80s, something happened.
Right.
With music and pop radio.
It was almost as though the disc jockeys were given papers to them to kill the pop star.
Yes.
And so what happens is you have the end of commercially out there pop music and the beginning of grunge and alternative music. And so here in the United States, we go for the grunge. I mean, if you couldn't avoid hearing grunge music during the 90s, if
Nirvana.
Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots. There's countless people out there that I'm not knocking it. I like some of this music.
I appreciate it for what it did, but I resent them for pushing out things I did. But
I did not dress up like a lumberjack and with my shirt untucked.
Lumber grunge.
Lumber grunge.
I just made that up, lumber grunge.
That's good. Bravo. But so what happens to electronic music is it goes underground.
But anytime something goes underground, it gets better.
Yes.
And we'll talk about things going underground and artists not being seen but heard, which I didn't know there was a strange thing about techno electronic artists. A lot of times you don't ever see or hear these people, so we'll talk about that when we get into the late 90s. But are we going near a break? Or?
No, in fact, we are not due for another break for another 10 minutes.
You said to mention this one group, but I didn't have anything about them.
What group is that?
Ultravox.
I just wanted to bring them up as a significant band to listen to. So Ultravox, if you get a chance to listen to them.
Now, when we were researching this, how I chose the artists I did is I just went through, I put in most influential electronic musicians, top grossing EDM albums, just all kinds of things. So I would go through these lists, top 10, top 20, top 100, and I kept seeing the ones that kept showing up across all of them. So that's how I picked some of these other ones. Now, is the Orb the 90s?
Yes.
So I start with the Orb.
Little fluffy clouds.
This is where they start sampling spoken word. It's very strange. So the Orb invented an electronic genre known as ambient house soundtrack. And let me tell you, electronic music, it sounds like to me when you get to the 90s, it all goes underground. Something happens to the electronic music where it just explodes into these subgenres.
Right.
A lot of them I don't even fully understand what they mean. I mean, I thought I knew what ambient is, and then you come into the really recent times with, dubstep has a subgenre.
Right.
And like, it just blows. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can remember all the different. I mean, you had jungle, you had drum and bass,
acid house, rave, techno. It just goes on and on and on
Right.
and on. Well, techno has that's like an umbrella with all these things, and I don't even know. So, the Orb, to make it a bit more listenable and danceable, they made obscure vocal soundtrack samples. They had these. Well, like you said, Little Fluffy Clouds was a good example of how they took this sampling and they just sort of made like a mood underneath
Basically,
it
was like, man, that's some great stuff. I could really just chill out to that, man.
They sampled things from like BBC nature recordings to NASA space broadcasts and special effects. They put that in and make these soundtracks. So in 1990, Dave Stewart asked the Orb to remix his single Lily Was Here, and that hit the UK top 20. So they get known for their remix work, which became just as popular as their original material. So when Little Fluffy Clouds appeared in 1990, that sparked the wrath of Ricky Lee Jones, because it was some of her samples, and she was having a dialogue with LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow. So that's in the chorus of Little Fluffy Clouds. So you have to check that out. So they were the pioneers of ambient house music. So then we get into I'm going to call them controversial.
Okay.
The KLF.
Are they going to rock you?
KLF is going to rock you. So this is a quote. More than any pop band in history, the KLF ripped off the music industry for a bucket full of loot and got away with it, as illustrated in their own guidebook to creating #1 singles. So, the guy who founded it, Bill Drummond, he got involved with the local punk scene in the 70s after he ran away. He formed a short-lived band and a label. He was the manager of Echo and the Bunnymen for a while. He quit in 86, and he said, I'm just going to retire from music. And then six months later, he's like, I'm going to make a hip-hop album. So he called up his old friend, Jimmy Cauty, not sure how that's pronounced, to help him produce it. And so a week later, they christened Justified Ancients of Moo, or Jams for short.
Right.
Which was heavily sampled pastiche of All You Need Is Love, which I didn't know because I'm very familiar with these tracks. And they released something in 87, a debut album, which continued to pirate long passages from the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and ABBA. ABBA actually objected and sued him for copyright protection and demanded all the copies of their music be recalled and destroyed. So instead of doing that, KLF traveled to Sweden hoping they could meet with ABBA and resolve it, but they got locked out of the studio, and so they decided to return to England and burn 500 copies of ABBA of their music. So they're just very, very emotional.
Right.
So in 1990, they released 3 a.m. Eternal, and it took over a #1 spot in January of 91. They had Last Train to Transville, and they carried on their success into Europe in the 91s, and they finally caught it in America with 3 a.m. Eternal, and it went to #5 on the Acid House charts. I didn't even know there was one, but yeah, they were probably the first ones to get into the deepest trouble with sampling. So that the 3 a.m. Eternal and didn't they have Tammy Wynette on that?
Yeah, I think they did. 3 a.m. Eternal, I'm singing it in my head now. Yeah, they had Tammy Wynette.
All Bound from Moo Moo Land, whatever that means.
Exactly.
So, I thought they were interesting. So, next we have the Crystal Method.
Yes.
They're dance-based, electronic. They have sort of a rock feel, though, to them. Trying to think of their most famous work. I have it here.
Actually, everybody should know one of their most famous works. If you've ever watched the show Bones, they do the theme song to Bones.
Yeah.
But I mean, they, as far as who they are, if you've never listened or you've ever seen the show, they've done the theme song. But they've done other works of music that are significant.
Well, they have a solid American base. They have, influences rock, hip hop, soul, pop. They were formed in '93.
Mm-hmm.
They have a longest running nonstop string and projects that led them from Las Vegas. So that's their debut album, Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say some of their music has been in a car commercial. It must have been the '90s, I think.
Well, they've also been on, in the movies as far as they were on the soundtrack, I believe, to Tron Legacy.
Were they?
Yeah.
They?
Yeah, so they've done some remixes for that.
Well, they were part of the early '90s LA rave scene,
yeah.
But they want to be taken seriously as a band. Now, here's where we get into something I didn't know about and understand. They want to be out front and be seen, as opposed to the enforced anonymity of most techno acts, a kind of a new concept for American dance producers. And we'll get into this with the next artist. They're known for their live performances. They have big popular in clubs and radio jocks, and they had a deal with Geffen. They're kind of acid funk rock beat hip hop. Is this the Block Rock and Beats? This group?
No, you're thinking of Chemical Brothers.
Oh, I think of Chemical Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get Crystal Method and Chemical Brothers a little mixed up.
Well, I think it's your inner Walter White probably talking to you.
Yeah. So that's about all I have about the Crystal Method. Is I couldn't find a whole lot about their sound.
Right. Well, their sound is very edgy. As far as synth generated, as you can remember from listening to or watching Bones, I call it the sawing synth, where it seems kind of with their music, and they have some great sounds that have been remixed lately. That goes for dubstep. I'll get this out eventually.
Dubstep?
Yeah, dubstep.
I like dubstep.
Yeah, so it's quite good music to bug out to. Anyway, you were gonna say.
So, this concept that they want to be taken seriously as a band and be out front, and I didn't realize there was this issue with techno artists kind of being in the background, and you hear them but you don't see them. So this comes up again with the next really heavily influential artist, Moby.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and take our break. I know we're about a minute early. So when we come back, we'll talk about Moby, and then we'll kind of rush through the rest of the 90s and kind of bring us up to date to modern music and maybe take a few phone calls if we can. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, and we're watching you in the Spreaker app. So don't misbehave there.
I haven't been watching.
We'll be back.
You're listening to Spaceboy Universe, the #1 broadcast for robots.
They say in space, no one can hear you jam. But that has all changed when Spaceboy dropped his latest release digital. Get your copy now on spaceboymusic.com.
To call in, dial area code 713-701-5214. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
All we are back. And so we're cruising down the highway of the 1990s. So what you got next for me, dear?
Well, you won't let me talk about my personal feelings about 90s music, so I'll skip that.
I know, quite frankly, 90s was
difficult for me.
Difficult for
music.
But I look at it as, maybe it was a good thing that...
well, I was living in a smaller town than Houston, and our local radio did not have variety. Mm-hmm. And there was no way I could have heard some of these artists. I didn't hear them till, maybe, a certain new music format came out, the MP3, and I guess we won't talk about how I found that. But so in the 90s, you get Moby. Now, he's supposedly controversial in that the critics say, oh, he really diluted electronic music and techno because he made it was popular, it charted, now it's mainstream, and you've got this idea like once it's mainstream, it's no good, because if it's underground and it's unknown, it's just this hipstery crap, So, because if everybody likes it, then it can't be any good anymore. So that just blows my mind. But he's an important figure in dance music in the 90s. He does bring this electronic music into mainstream in both England and America. Mm-hmm. He fused disco beats with heavy distorted guitars, punk rhythms. He drew from pop, dance, and movie soundtracks. They say he had cool surface textures, ambient music, house music. His lifestyle was actually extreme, too. He's famous for his devout, radical Christian beliefs, as well as environmentalist stand and vegan activism. So in 93, he released I Feel It /1000. It was an A single. It became a moderate hit in the UK, but the song 1000, according to the Guinness Book of Records, is the fastest single ever, appropriately clocking at 1,000 beats a minute. Is that possible?
Well, I've never seen anything clocking in that fast, but...
And yes, his great-great-great uncle was Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, so that's how Moby got his little name. So his fifth studio album, Play, appeared in 99, and this surpassed everyone's expectations and went double platinum, and it reached number 1 in the UK. He was expected to release an album this year, but it didn't happen. Play, I remember it was a very famous, very minimal with lyrics, kind of atmospheric, and then he had more hard-hitting music too. I'm trying to think of some of the songs. Yeah. But I couldn't find them listed. They were just talking about the albums.
Well, one of my favorite ones is Porcelain.
Yes.
Which is from the movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. And it's a quite delish of a song to listen to. It's easygoing, and one of my favorite Moby songs that I would highly recommend listening to. But so with Moby, I was looking through the Spreaker chat and I noticed people were yelling Prodigy.
They're next.
Yeah. So what do we got on Prodigy?
Prodigy cracks me up a little bit. So the Prodigy kind of did this neat little balancing act between having real artistic merit and mainstream visibility in the 90s. So they kind of defeated the image, unconsciousness attitude of electronic artists. Once again, Moby was out front, and now you got these two guys out front. They're not just two guys behind in a DJ booth. They're not just two guys in a studio. You see this. So it's formed by Keith Flint and Liam Howlett. They crossed over in the mainstream with incendiary live experience that approximated an original atmosphere of British rave scene. They had kind of an arena rock showmanship and punk theatrics. Flint's spiky hairstyle and piercings made for better advertising, but the actual music got him to the top of the charts. They had big hooks and samples. Their third album, Fat of the Land, released in 96, included Firestarter, and that went to the British top charts, number 1. And the video for Firestarter was almost banned over there due to complaints about an arson fixation. And also, I think Flint scared people with his crazy horned hair and
he did look
piercings.
a little crazy there, but I think it added to the band's persona. I mean, he was just it was like, I wouldn't want to meet this guy. I mean, he seemed like he had just drank like 10 gallons of soda and
Red
he was all
Bull or something.
hyped up on caffeine,
But it wasn't. They weren't a major success like Firestarter wasn't a major success here, but they got a high-profile spot on MTV's Buzzbin that introduced a prodigy to Americans, and it fueled a major label push for electronic music during the following year. So I think they may have brought electronic music, kind of like their edginess, it kind of resurged over here in America. And I like Firestarter and Breathe.
Yeah,
that one's fun to sing along to because you're just kind of screaming and it's just
that's so campfire worthy. Let's all get along and get around the campfire and sing a little Firestarter.
Yeah, and the Firestarter. Of course, I always remember. I had it in my head, the song, and then we saw something on TV that kind of just messed up Firestarter for me because every time I hear it, I laugh now.
Basically, it was the Venture Brothers.
The Venture Brothers on Adult Swim.
And they go underground under the base.
Did this thing where they get trapped into these underground tunnels under their house compound, and they forgot they were there, and there's these people living underground for the last 20 years they didn't know about, and he finds an emergency phone. He's like, Brock, can you help me? There's a guy down here jumping around talking about he's the Firestarter, and I don't know what's going on.
Great stuff.
Great stuff, the Venture Brothers. So, yeah, they have their place in electronic music history. And then you get someone like Aphex Twin in 92. Rolling Stone magazine said of Aphex Twin expanded way beyond ambient music of Brian Eno by fusing lush soundscapes with oceanic beats and bass lines. He's been credited for creating the most interesting music created with a keyboard in a computer. He's kind of an alternative genre. Aphex Twin is actually a man called Richard D. James. He's gotten critical praise more than any other electronic artist. He's got, let's see, I've got something that sums this up better here than my notes. My notes kind of just fall apart. He released selected ambient works 85 through 92 to critical acclaim. If you've ever heard his stuff, I don't think I can adequately describe it. I know Window Licker. I know it sounds crazy. He's probably known for his videos.
Strange indeed.
You've got these like gorgeous bikini-clad women. You see them from the neck down, and it's just all kind of writhing around to the beat. And then this is probably Window Licker. You get to the end, and they back out, and you get to see their faces, and it's Richard James' face on these bodies, and it's really deeply disturbing.
It is. I mean, that particular video is very disturbing. But so, Aphex Twin, who else do we have 90s wise? Well,
as Aphex Twin was part of that time with Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails, experimental jungle drum and bass. He had very good success. I guess he's still at it today. But next one is still with us today, but they started in the 90s, and they are hugely popular, and that is Daft Punk. They got their name from a critic saying their music was this daft punky trash, and they were amused by that, so they kept the name Daft Punk. This is the combined talents of Guy Manuel de Hominin Cristo and Thomas Bangalter. They're a Parisian duo, and they were known for doing their lo-fi cover of Beach Boys' song, which earned them their name Daft Punk. They released their debut single, The New Wave, in 93. They were instantly hailed by the dance music press as the work of a new breed of house innovators in house music. The single was followed by Da Funk. That's their first true hit. It sold 30,000 copies worldwide. And everyone remixed it, like even the Chemical Brothers. So they had more singles, and their sound is kind of dance floor, progressive house, funk, electro. You could have to know what all these mean to understand it. They have a little hip hop, break beats. They're also known for sampling other things as well, like going way back. Now, they famously were doing the soundtrack to Tron Legacy, and they actually did a cameo in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, in 2013, they announced they were going to have a new album and released by May of that year. So in March, they announced the title Random Access Memories, and they launched it with an extensive press campaign, and they featured snippets of it on their lead single, Get Lucky. The interviews with some of their collaborators on that are Nile Rodgers, Paul Williams, Giorgio Moroder, and Panda Bear. I don't know who that artist is. When they released it in May, it became their biggest success. They won Grammy Awards for Best Dance Electronica Album, Album of the Year, Best Engineered Album, Non-Classical. Get Lucky earned Grammys for Best Pop Duo Performance and Record of the Year. Now, I know them for things like Around the World, which some actually counted the number of times Around the World is said or sung. I don't know why they would do that. What's the one that goes buy it, break it, use it, fresh it, fix it? That one?
Right.
Technologic. That one. They remind me so much of Kraftwerk. Not only because they look like robots, too. I don't know if you've ever seen Daft Punk. These are the guys who always wear suits and the same helmets, so you never see them.
It's probably just as well.
Yeah, I think there must be something out there where they have their helmets off, and it's probably one of these things like, no, put that back on. So, but I like Daft Punk, and if that's kind of how mainstream of you, well, they've got a lot of remixes of the Tron Legacy that I really enjoy, and they go well with mashup stuff. So
I think you were going to comment about these bands that hide their...
Yeah, so it's funny how you've got through the 90s where it's like this controversy of they're heard but not seen. And then you've got these ones coming out like Moby, which takes things mainstream. It's like, oh, look at me, Moby, I'm bald and awesome. And then what we said, Crystal Method. Mm-hmm. They're like, take us seriously, look at us, da-da-da-da. And then you've got Daft Punk. You see them, but you don't see their faces. And then you've got Deadmau5, who wears this big plastic mouse head.
Another group would be Gorillaz.
You never see them, never.
No, it's always animated.
They're represented by animation.
Right.
So I never knew what this controversy was between being seen, being not seen, and then having this representation. So I just thought that was interesting. So speaking of Deadmau5, his name is Joel Zimmerman. He was born in 1981. He was an electronic music dance maker. He rose to prominence with his track Faxing Berlin, which I've not heard. I'm going to go check that out. Mm-hmm. He's got his own record label, which he signed Skrillex to. But he said he's an important figure in the world of progressive house music. I can't sit here and tell you I understand what that term progressive house music means. Mm-hmm. So he's appeared on many compilations. Of course, this is all, stuff done in Ibiza. I don't know what it is about Ibiza, Spain, that people gravitate to with electronic music.
It's a great place to go for electronic music. It's, easy access for most of Europe, which Europeans love electronic music more so than Americans do. So you have a lot of people gravitating to Ibiza, and as I said, all the pretty people go there too as well.
I was just going to address somebody who said, I've never even heard of half these groups where I've been. Well, these don't get mainstream radio airplay. You're not going to probably hear them walking around in the supermarket,
right.
Top 40. These have been marginalized, especially in the 90s. You would have to dig to find these.
And it's because of the 90s. If I would imagine if the trend had kept going with pop music,
if the DJs had left it
alone, things would be much more different.
See, I'll try to keep my emotions out of this. In the 90s, I was in my 20s. I was like 1990, I was 18. So I was in college. And I was still clinging to my beloved 80s music, which I still cling to now. And I just did not find anything in top 40 radio. And as I said, my local radio station choices were very limited. You had your urban station, 50,000 country music stations, and one adult contemporary and alt rock, whatever was going on in the 90s. And it was just sort of heartbreaking. My personal opinion is, God, music was crap in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Because it was so bad, the mainstream, I was digging and so it's kind of like, well, I didn't find what I was looking for, so I turned to drugs. But my drug was
the internet.
Techno music.
Well, the thing is that you bring up a good point is that you were basically that first part of the 80s or first part of the 90s. You have music that, there's nothing there for me. Mm-hmm. I mean,
there was nothing there for me in the 90s mainstream. And
knowing you very well, you didn't go to raves or technos or anything like that.
Well, there weren't any in my hometown.
But I digress. So it's not until you get to the later 90s that you have the internet go full on Napster. And you're able to access.
That's where I got introduced to things I never heard. I was like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, hey, I like that." Mm-hmm. And
things you would have never heard,
and especially remixes, like covers. And that's how I found out about people like Benny Benassi. Mm-hmm. He did covers in Front 242,
right? Covers
and Soul Wax, and just things I never heard of them like. And that also somehow from there I found mashups through a different place. But,
so it could be said that the internet revived electronic music.
It could be, maybe not necessarily legally, but, and again, a lot of this stuff was marginalized and underground because it wasn't getting the mainstream top 40 pop radio play. But here we are now where you don't need radio anymore.
No. I mean, you've
got internet radio,
right?
And you
exactly.
can have your own playlist, and you got Spotify, and you got SoundCloud,
or you could have your own talk show.
You can have your own talk show, and no one can stop you from talking about things like electronic music that no one cares about but you.
But before we run out of time, Surlana, I want to bring us up to modern music. As far as you have groups like Skrillex, you have groups.
I've got Tiesto, DJ Tiesto, which I'm not sure I'm spelling that right.
Here's somebody.
That guy's prolific.
He is not mainstream whatsoever.
No.
But when you see videos of this guy in concert, he is packing them in like 10,000 people easily to come listen to him jam out. So it's like
he's really more of a remix artist,
right?
Where he could take other people's stuff and make it into something new,
right?
He's probably most famous for his remix of this group called Delirium. Delirium has this song called Silence, which features Sarah McLachlan. So Tiesto took that song, Silence, and mixed it into an 11.5-minute song that just totally redid it. It was a commercial success. He spent 4 weeks at the top 10 in the UK for that. Number 3 on the Billboard charts. That was very influential to other artists. He was sought after by producers and remixers. He pioneered a stylized music trend of weaving ethereal female vocals, I guess like McLachlan, with the pulsating electronic rhythms.
Who else do you got on that list?
I've got Justice, which I didn't find anything about, but Justice, you'll know. You may have heard this like on a Muzak, or you go into the gas station. DANCE. They have a really great video that goes with this. Go look them up on YouTube. DANCE. Very catchy tune, and it's got, the video is 2 guys walking around in T-shirts, and the animation keeps changing on the T-shirt. It's very cool. And I think what's neat about DANCE, dance, is it's got kind of sounds like kids singing it,
right?
And it reminds me so much of ABC by the Jackson 5. It has that really youthful, upbeat sound. Check that out if you never heard it. But they were driven by trend-setting internet bloggers to champion this song. So this is like one of the first experiences in 2007 where you get the internet pushing the popularity of a song with the video.
What I like about that, you bring up a good point here, is that MTV, I feel like, killed the video star because they went off and did their own, special programming.
Video killed the radio star, and then MTV turned around and killed the video.
Yeah, so, and then what was nice is when you get to back, like I said earlier about the 90s, internet. YouTube has been a great source of music videos. And so you get this, it's almost like a second time around with music videos and groups like this that are not very mainstream, that have the opportunity to put their stuff out there for people to see.
They've proven that the music video isn't dead. If you do it right, it can go viral. Like there's a group, OK Go.
Yes. That
is now known for really awesome music videos. The first one being, these are the guys who, quote unquote, dance on the treadmills. This perfectly choreographed treadmill dance. So if you've got a good gimmick for your music, you will go viral.
Right.
And that's just another way to do it now.
So that was quickly, I'd say, electronic music. Like I said, we probably missed a few people's favorite electronics.
Just all I have left is Skrillex.
Okay.
His name is Sonny Moore. He was mainstream in 2008. He has signed with Deadmau5's label. In 2009, he worked with Lady Gaga on Bad Romance and Snoop Dogg. And in 2010, he released My Name is Skrillex, combining of Benny Benassi and Deadmau5 sounds. See, he signed with Deadmau5 in 2010. He released Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. This is probably the one, if anybody knows him, they know that one, along with the club hit Kill Everybody. He got a trio of Grammy Awards in 2011, including Best Dance Electronica Album for Scary Monsters. He appeared on Beavis and Butthead's revival.
Okay, well, I mean, another prolific creator of new music.
He's still out there. He's new,
He's new, and but at the same time, not mainstream, but mainstream in the sense of internet, all the different ways that you can go viral and that aspect.
You've got to go. You don't have MTV as your outlet anymore to push your product. Now you've got to. There's like a new paradigm you got to get into. So
okay. Well, like I said, we pretty much covered a lot of electronic music tonight, and I'm looking over the Spreaker app, and I know that there's a few artists that we covered. Yes, Nethead, I do.
Yeah,
we were going to cover that, but
Calvin Harris was discovered on MySpace.
Yes, a couple of my favorites, and this might, these artists might come up in a few weeks from now, and I just wanted to cover. A little housekeeping before
you may hear all this again soon.
Yes, and we have a show on the 26th called Behind the Music.
Spaceboy Behind the Music.
And I guess we will have a show that day. So, but I wanted to cover next week's show is going to be Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla
with
Tesla Talk
with special guest Gordon Roop. And also
never heard of him.
Yeah, never heard of him. And the 19th, we're doing cryptids. And who's the special guest on that one?
Special guest with our cryptids is author Lorelei DeLille, who has her first book on Kindle on Amazon, which is called That Voodoo That You Do. You can go get it right now, and she'll talk about how she did the research into some things like the Rougarou, the werewolf, in order to write this book.
Right. So that should be a great show. So we got 3 shows there lined up, and yes, we'll be on the air on the 2nd of January, which will be the beginning of the 2016 year of Spaceboy Universe, which we're excited because a lot of changes have come down the pipe that will keep growing the show bigger and bigger, and so a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, and then that's what I said on the 26th we'll be doing like a parody of VH1's Behind the Music, where it'll be me interviewing Spaceboy as Spaceboy Music, and I will try to make that entertaining because it'll be the day after Christmas. People will be like, kind of zoned out. So I'm going to try to make that as humorous as possible because I don't want you to take yourself so seriously.
I know. She has to deflate my ego some way.
It's got to be done at least once a month because it's like maintenance. It's routine maintenance. I got to pop that bubble.
Anything else that we need to cover?
Ooh. Are we about to do something momentous or?
Not for another 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, we still listen to a lot electronic music now. Would you say that the bulk of our listening is the artists we've covered or artists like them?
I guess we cover a lot of artists like them.
I found a group that's similar to Justice, which is called Crystal Castles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's something we didn't cover was in electronic music sampling sounds of early gaming, like from the Atari 2600. Those. I don't know what you call them, but you do this. You've got songs where you've sampled it sounds like 8-bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do, and that would be something that...
we won't get into that, but I was just saying I enjoy artists who do that because it takes you back to a time.
And we'll definitely,
we'll cover that.
Cover that in the Behind the Music episode on the 26th, because as you know, a lot of my music is influenced by that style of music, the 8-bit and everything. So, I guess when I was saying house cleaning things, to add to that, if they wanted to get a hold of you, Surlana,
get a hold of me. I mean, I'm here on Twitter, all the time.
Yeah.
But if you want to email me, Surlana at spaceboyuniverse.com, Surlana, like no one doesn't know that. So
no, but it's good to remind people if they want to contact you. What about Twitter?
Twitter, same thing, at Surlana.
Okay.
You're like at the SB Universe.
Right, but and I know
I'm in Spreaker Chat now as Spaceboy Universe because there's really no way for me to differentiate myself.
Right. So I just wanted to make sure that people, if they wanted to get in touch with you, you can contact you by Surlana at spaceboyuniverse.com, or if they want to get a hold of you on Twitter, the same handle, Surlana. What is it? It's Surlana. I don't even know.
At Surlana. That's it.
Is it really at Surlana?
Yeah, it can be more simple.
Oh, well, that's pretty groovy then.
I've had that way longer than, we've been doing this or been tweeting with the other radio show we know. I don't even know why I don't remember why I initially got Twitter. I really don't.
Something I guess I want to throw out there too is that I guess I read a few posts that people were like, wow, this is kind of a different show than I'm used to. And
well, this is because Spaceboy Universe covers 6 main topics, and we'll shuffle them around like a deck of cards, which are one of them being music, and because Spaceboy is Spaceboy Music as well, and he is a electronic music composer, this is probably going to come up a few times. But we also cover history, technology, fringe science. And what's another one?
Technology, pop culture.
Pop culture.
Yeah. Well, there's the music to get us out of here, Surlana. So I just want to say that Spaceboy is executive produced by Surlana. Oh. Also produced by Dennis Koch. Yay, Dennis.
The social media machine.
And your hosts have been tonight Spaceboy and Surlana. So join us next week, where we'll be talking about Tesla, and hopefully Gordon will be with us, and should be a great show. So tune in to spaceboyuniverse.com, and we'll see you then. Good night, Space Cadets.